Hey Dreamer Universe, this is your host Joe Pardo, and I am very proud to announce that starting today, you can be inspired with new episodes of Dreamers Podcast Monday through Friday. The love and support I have received from the show has been phenomenal. Dreamers Podcast is constantly being pegged on iTunes' new and noteworthy sections for health, society and culture, business, as well as overall podcasts. Please keep the reviews coming both on iTunes and Stitcher Radio. Dreamers Podcast has surpassed 3,200 downloads in the first month. I am so grateful for all the love and support I have received. I'd like to take a moment and read a few reviews for you. Live Network said, I love this show and where Joe wants to take it. Ms. Basketball 2133, everyone has a dream, either little or big. This podcast is truly inspiring to all who listen. Lauren8401 said, this is such a great podcast, very inspirational. I really appreciate all of the great comments and the reviews. Please keep them coming, and please keep spreading not only the podcast, but what the show is about to people, because I think that it's really important for people to understand the message that the show is bringing to everyone.
This is the Dreamers Podcast, where dreamers share their stories to inspire you. Now, join host Joe Pardo as he interviews a dreamer who's living their dreams.
Welcome to the Dreamers Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Pardo, and today I'm interviewing Marjo Miles, who is living her dream through travel, or seeing the world, or something. Well, welcome to the show, Marjo.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Let's start by giving a little background about yourself.
Okay, well, I live here in New Jersey, in East Greenwich. I've been here now for probably about 13 years, but prior to that, I moved around quite a bit with my family. So we started out on the West Coast and kind of ping-ponged around while I was growing up until we ended up in New Jersey. We moved about 19 times in total, 12 different states, and here we are now. I've been here. I work in marketing for a property management company, and I try to travel and explore as often as I can.
Well, we've known each other a long time, and I know that you've been all over the world. Could you name a handful of places?
Well, most recently I was in Norway and Ireland. That was in 2014. Last year was a really busy year. I went to Europe, Iceland. I was in Sweden, Holland. I also went to Colombia, Nicaragua, and Costa Rica recently as well. I did a little bit of time in Sydney. I lived there for about 4 months in Australia and New Zealand. Been to, several different places in Europe. In total, I've been to about 20 countries. My goal is 100, so I have quite a ways to go.
Well, I'm very positive that you will get there, given the rate that you've been there and the fact that you're not very old. So what would you say inspires you?
I think just life is inspiring. Traveling around, I get to meet so many different people and do a lot of different things. And it's really humbling to be at some of the landmarks or to meet some local people in Nicaragua or, Colombia, places that tend to get a bad reputation. But when you're there, you can see, the local flair, and a lot of the misconceptions that Americans tend to usually have is not necessarily the case. So it's really just very inspiring to see everybody and how they live differently than we do, or the same in some cases.
How would you say your dream came about?
Well, growing up, we did travel quite a bit I say locally, but in the United States. Moving around, we did a lot of trips back and forth from the East Coast to the West Coast to visit family. And when I was in high school, I was fortunate enough to do a summer trip in between my sophomore and junior year to Europe. It was a 3-week trip, and we got to visit 6 countries. So that's kind of where I caught the travel bug a little bit. Since then, I just always wanted to travel and explore new places. And then, as you know, while we were in high school, we had an exchange student stay with us from Japan. So I had the opportunity to go to Japan and stay with her family. During college, I went to Florida and I did the Disney College program. So while I was there, I worked with people from all over the world and made some really good friends that I've kept in touch with, who have kind of just led me to travel, to see them, to visit them where they live. But also, one of my greatest friendships comes from a person that I did work with at Disney. He's from Holland. I visited him and his family there a couple times. He moved to Australia with his now wife, and they invited me to come visit. And then after visiting them, I fell in love with Australia, so I went back for a few months. But it's really just all about networking and keeping up with people. And even though a lot of my friends aren't local, I still have the opportunity to go visit them and to see how they experience life.
Could you go more in depth about how you went about living in Australia for a couple months, like the details of how that works?
Yeah, so several years back, it was 2011 that I went, but probably early 2010, I had gotten an email from my friend, whose name is Wouter, his fiance at the time. They were living in Italy, and they were going to Australia, and she was like, you should come. They were going on a working holiday visa, which allowed them to stay in the country for up to a year and work, virtually for any employer while they explore Australia. And she was trying to convince me to do that as well. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I have a job. I have bills. I can't do that. But I did work out the opportunity to go visit them. It was supposed to be towards the end of their trip. So it was early 2011 that I went. And at that time, I found out that my friend had gotten a position that allowed for him to get sponsored. And so now they're Australian residents. They have moved to Perth, and they're buying a house, and everything's really going very well for them. But when I went to visit them, they were, telling me about their year and some of the things that they had done. And I got the opportunity to meet several other people that were there on working holiday visas. And I came home, and I'm like, you know what? I passed it up the first time, but I'm not going to pass it up the second time. I mean, even though I did have a full-time job and I had bills to pay and all of that, you just got to live your life and not be scared to try new things. So I did go. I was there for 4 months, which was planned. I mean, it wasn't like I was planning to stay there the whole year. And I just met some amazing people, and I did a lot of really cool things. And I worked while I was there, so I was able to support myself and have a good time, of course. But I absolutely would recommend everybody try something like that if they have the opportunity, because it really takes you out of your comfort zone, but it gives you the opportunity to see things in a whole new way and to have a deeper respect for your home and the things that you have here, that you may take for granted sometimes, like air conditioning and Wi-Fi. the important things, of course.
Only the necessities.
Yes.
How was all this received by your family? Like traveling, and then specifically when you were like, hey, I'm going to Australia and I'll be back in 4, 6,
yeah,
who knows? Maybe I won't come back.
I think that my family is not surprised by anything that I say anymore. And they're just kind of like, yeah, okay, go do what you want. Have fun. But I'm very fortunate. My parents have always been really supportive of what I want to do. They've got no issues. They said, if you want to go to Australia, go, have a good time. When I went the first time to visit my friend, I actually went with my mom and my sister. So my mom saw where I was going to be living, saw all of that. So she really didn't have any concern. Well, I'm sure she did. She's a mom, but you know what I mean? She was like...
It's not like she met every person in Australia and was like,
no,
they're all
cool.
No. It's cool.
But she saw, she knew my friends prior to going. She had met them. And so she kind of got to speak with some other people while we were shopping or out at different tourist attractions. She met a lot of people that were there on working holiday visas as well. So she kind of talked to them about their experience. And, it was really, it was great. And I actually took a friend from home with me. So I wasn't completely by myself. And my friends were there that, I did know. So I think that because I kind of had somebody there that already knew the area, it was okay. And I mean, I was 24, 25, however old. So,
So what steps did you take to get started? I guess specifically with traveling, like getting used to being out on your own and other parts of the world where there might not be Wi-Fi or air conditioning.
It's rough.
As well as moving to Australia.
Yeah, well, it definitely was a little bit intimidating, like picking up and moving over there. Luckily, I'm very fortunate. Like I said, my family is very supportive, but my boss is also very supportive. So, I went to her and I was kind of like, I'm going to Australia and it's been fun and thank you. And she allowed me to, go and do what I had to do. And then when I came back, I still had a position. And luckily, like I said, she lets me travel. I'm sure she doesn't like it as much when I'm gone, but she does let me go where I need to go when I need to go. So I have a little bit of flexibility that way. And she, too, is not really surprised when I come to her and say, oh, I need a week off because I'm going to wherever. She's just like, okay, go do your thing. See you in a week. But really, the first start is research. You have to figure out where you want to go and what you want to do, and then you research, ask around. There's a great, as you know, like online presence for all sorts of things, but there's a few really good travel websites and travel networking sites. So you can get a lot of reviews and meet people that have done the things that you want to do, or not meet them, but talk to them. And once you go from there, like the Australia thing, we had to get our visas. That was the first step. You apply for the visa. Once that's granted, then you can work on setting up your timeline, looking for a job, looking for a place to live. And that really we went into completely blind. We had our visa and we had our one-way ticket to Australia, and then a rental car for a week and a hotel for a week. And we had to, when we got there, we found a place to live and found jobs close to where we were living. And it all just kind of came together. You got to have a little faith that everything will work out. And it did. It always does. May not be exactly how you plan it, but it works out in the end.
That's got to be pretty daunting, not knowing where you're going to go live in a week later.
We did joke around that we were homeless for about 2 days because our hotel was about to run out and we didn't have a place to live. Not like we couldn't have stayed at the hotel longer,
Extended.
but we did find a place. And it is, it's just all part of the adventure. As long as you have a place and you have a network to fall back on, you're set.
So were there any roadblocks with all of that?
In Australia, there were not. There was one when we first arrived. I kind of got the dirty looks from Border Patrol, and they were like, "We have an issue with your visa." And I said, "What kind of issue?" And they said, "Well, your name doesn't match your passport." And I'm like, "Well, how do we fix that?" And they're like, "No problem. We'll take care of that for you." And 5 minutes later, I was on my way. So it was really that was my roadblock. My visa didn't match the name on my passport because of my middle initial. They take that very serious there. Very serious.
Serious enough to fix it in 5 minutes and send you on your way?
Uh-huh. No, but definitely when you're trying to open a bank account, on all my stuff here, my passport, my credit cards, they list my middle initial, but not my middle name, and there you have to use your full name, and so everything doesn't quite match up, and it creates a little bit of an issue when we were trying to open our bank accounts and sign our lease as well, but got around it pretty quickly. Not too many issues.
Well, how about with traveling in general? Has there been any roadblocks that you ran into that?
Not specific roadblocks, just kind of some general frustrations. There's always things about traveling. TSA is lovely. That can always take some time. Delays with certain airlines or, things like that. But those are just normal frustrations, and they all add to the story later on. So you kind of just get through it. I mean, we've had some issues. Most recently, I was in Ireland in March, and we had quite a bit of car trouble. We had a car that really didn't work very, very well at all, and so we had lost about a day and a half of our trip because we were sitting on the side of the road with a car that wouldn't start. But, you do the best you can and you move on with it. Just roll with it.
So has there been any parts of your dream of traveling and living on Australia that didn't quite work out the way you expected it to?
I wouldn't say that because I have generally pretty much an open mind on those sorts of things. I have a goal or things I want to do. Not really sure how they're going to work out, but at least at the end of the day, I can say I did it. I can cross it off my list, regardless of how it works out. And even if it doesn't go the way that I planned, or it's frustrating, or there was an issue, or whatever the case may be, it is very aggravating in the moment. But later on, it's really not that big a deal. And like I said, it makes a better story that way, really. You have more to tell.
So if you were stranded on a deserted island with your family, what are 3 things that you couldn't live without?
Oh, man. Well, I'm assuming if you're on a deserted island, you don't get the everyday necessities that we're used to now.
Well, you can have anything you want.
Is there electricity on the island?
Well, if you want something with a battery that lasts forever, then
battery forever. Well, I would probably try to take my phone. I know it may sound really very American, but I do love my phone, and Facebook is very important to me, not because of Facebook, but because it's the best way that I can keep up with my friends everywhere. It's the quickest way that I can keep in touch with them, sending them a message or, just kind of seeing what's going on. With time differences and people all over the world, it's very difficult sometimes to keep up, and so Facebook is really good for that sort of thing. I would want to have some way to access Facebook so I can keep in touch with everyone else, preferably.
Okay, so you got your phone with a never-ending battery.
Yes. Camera. You never know what kinds of trouble you're going to get into on a deserted island. You might want to take a picture, right? But really, I don't need anything. As long as I've got my family and I have a way to keep up with my friends, I don't really need anything else,
Fair enough. You're not the only one to say a phone. Actually, quite a few of my guests have said a cell phone.
Yeah.
And the reason is because they get to do all the things that they love in a small package.
It's true. You can literally do almost anything on your phone.
So I know not too long ago I sent you an article about how guys shouldn't date girls that travel all around the world because they have such high expectations of what adventure is to them. What's your thoughts on that, since you're a girl that travels all over the world?
I didn't care for the article very much. I think we talked about that, right? But everybody has their own outlook. The problem that I run into is people tend to say, oh, well, she's never satisfied or always looking for something else. And that's really not it at all. You know what I mean? The truth is, I think whether people want to admit it or not, they want to travel too. They want to do things too. They just may have different challenges. They may have a different outlook on it or think that it's not really possible in their current situation or whatever the case may be. So that is common, and I've talked to some of my friends about that article specifically, and there's a lot of spoof articles that have come out of it. But it is it's a very narrow look on people that like to travel in general, not just girls. I mean, I would say it's the flip side for guys too. It's just people that like to travel, people that like to try new things, and that's scary to a lot of people. So they tend to just want to shy away from it and not want anything to do with it. That's your outlook, okay? But I think that it's very narrow-minded.
So Marjo, what dreams do you have for the future?
So many. I want to try everything, literally. Like, I when I think of something that I want to do, I'm just like, oh, I got to hurry up and cross it off my list, right, so that I can do the next thing. Because a lot of people tend to say, oh, well, I'll do that later. In a few years, we'll go here. Or when I retire, we'll do that. And, life gets in the way, and it may never happen. So at least I can say, when I'm all done, I can say I did what I wanted to do. My biggest goal, which I'm trying to work on, is Antarctica. I'm going to conquer Antarctica. It's just going to take a little bit of time to sort it out because that's a complicated one. But that is my next big life goal.
I mean, do you have to be a scientist in order to get? Well, I guess not, because they had a marathon or a half marathon or something on Antarctica.
You don't need to be. They do cruises, and there's a few charter companies that fly there, but it's just very time consuming and very costly. So got to work it all in. And they only travel a couple times a year, which can be challenging as well. My goal was March. I was shooting for March, but then something else came up. So maybe March 2016, maybe.
Well, that is quite a dream.
Yeah.
I hope you do get there.
Someday. It'll happen.
So do you have any last thoughts you'd like to share with the audience?
I just think that everybody should just do what you want to do. Don't wait. Just do it now, because you never know what tomorrow's going to bring, and at least you can say you've done what you wanted to do in life. That's what it's really about. You only live once, right? So live right.
Do you have any Twitter or Facebook website that you document any of this stuff with that you could share?
I don't right now. My Facebook obviously has all of my pictures and some stories from my travel. I should probably start something, huh?
Yeah, Twitter would be the most logical place, or, you could do a Facebook page, but I would think Twitter would be the most logical place, or an Instagram.
I don't know. You've inspired me, Joe. Maybe I should start a Twitter page.
I think you should. It's quite easy, and you do travel a lot, so you'd have a lot to write about in 140 characters.
Or less.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show, Marjo. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Dreamers Podcast. Follow us on Twitter @Dreamers Podcast. Join us on Facebook at facebook.com/Dreamers Podcast. If you or someone you know would like to be a guest on the Dreamers Podcast, please send an email to j@jpar.co. This podcast is copyright 2014 by jpar.co.